Welcome, moviegoers. How are we doing? Good, good. Do you have your ticket? All right, what do we have here? Real Swell. Good choice. Now, before I let you go on to your theater, I do want to let you know that the producer is now on TikTok at real underscore swell. And between me and you, he literally has no idea how to use TikTok. He is flailing around over there. But go over if you're on TikTok, follow Real Swell, and enjoy the ride as he figures out what he's doing. But you're going to be in Auditorium 46 for this screening. It's straight ahead and to the right. Enjoy. Daredevil Born Again, Episode 3. We open with Matt getting Hector prepared for his trial that's upcoming. And we get a bit of backstory from Hector about where he's from, his home, his native land, where he's from. And he talks about the environment, the foliage there. He talks about some of the wildlife that's there. And we get a really good in-depth understanding of who Hector is and where he came from outside of having been in New York and living and being White Tiger. We also get a glimpse into Wilson Fisk and his wife Vanessa Fisk's relationship as they tried to again come together after the hiatus that Wilson had to go on after his injury and rehabilitation from that. Vanessa is trying to keep the streets in order. There are gangs, there's fights, there are murders going on. There was a hijacking of a truck where it was supposed to be a very smooth transaction, but one of the thugs got trigger happy, killed both people who were driving said truck, and it just caused a lot of whispering and murmuring and unease in the streets. Like the empire that Vanessa is trying to run seems like it's getting out of hand and out of control, and she wants to stamp that out essentially. And Wilson's response to her while they're having lunch is let that be. He is trying to become mayor and sit in this position of power so that he can make real change for the city. And if that means letting the he calls rats destroy each other, then that'll just make his job easier. Well, Vanessa rebuttals and says, once all of the rats are done killing each other, the ones who are left are going to come after you. So we need to handle this. But Wilson isn't having any of that, and he would rather stay focused on making sure that he is the best mayor he can be the right way. So there's still some tension between the Fisks on how to move forward in the public eye and on the underbelly of New York as the empire needs to still be run. As Matt gets Hector prepared for his trial, we also need to get Nikki Torres into the courtroom. He is the man that Hector saved down in the subway from those two officers. Those two officers who turns out Matt didn't kill in the last episode. They are actually still alive, beaten up, of course, but he didn't actually murder those two men. What's also interesting is he saw no blowback from that. Now, of course, it's because those two officers can't go to their precinct and say, we just got beat up by Matt Murdock while we were trying to shake down this witness who's not supposed to exist, essentially. So Matt has a few quips for this particular officer. Even while he's sitting on the stand, he kind of teases him about his face being all battered in. But Matt's PI friend goes to get Nicky Torres so that he can bring him to the courtroom. And they're in this safe house that is, of course, being watched by the corrupt cops looking for Nicky Torres. And they essentially know that he's there, but of course can't go in there and get him because that would look weird. However, as Matt's PI friend and Nicky are getting into the van and driving off on their way to the courthouse, the police start to follow him. And we take a few turns here and there, and they try to cut him off. And they do finally pull him over to essentially take out Nicky Torres. But he's not in the van, of course. They did a switcheroo. He's in a taxi on his way to the courthouse. Now, while that is going on, we're in the courtroom, and the prosecutor and Matt Murdock for the defense, they are exchanging statements for the jury and for the judge, speaking on who Hector is as a person, speaking on the kinds of things that would lead a person to save a life. And we also get the officer who survived the tussle down in the subway. He gets put on the stand as well. And he essentially perjures himself, of course, saying that he and his partner were just making their rounds. They are down in the subway, there's no one there, and Hector just comes out of nowhere and just attacks them for no apparent reason. They get into a fight, and the next thing the officer knows, he sees Hector pushing his partner onto the tracks. Now, of course, from what we saw, literally, that isn't what happened, so we know he is lying. But on cross, Matt brings up Nicky Torres. It turns out Nicky Torres was their CI. He was their confidential informant. They were there just trying to rough him up, probably for more information or just to take advantage of him and not pay him what they were probably owed to him. And Matt asks the officer, "Do you know a man by the name of Nicky Torres?" The officer says no. And Matt kind of slyly laughs and chuckles and says, "Okay, I just want to be clear. You don't know Nicky Torres. There was no other person down in the subway when Hector approached you. You were alone." And the officer says, "Yes, I don't know Nicky, and this attack by Hector came out of nowhere. We were just making our rounds, minding our own business, and he just attacked." Now, throughout that scene, it's interwoven with the car chase that the PI is on. So we've got this very intense, suspense-filled sequence of scenes that don't involve any kind of action. Like, the writing in this episode is very good. We see this a lot in these kinds of action movies where there's a witness who needs to get to the courthouse. And if it's written in such a way, it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel stale. It still feels suspenseful. And this was an amazing episode from a courtroom drama perspective. Like, the writers were here. It just felt like they were just flexing their skills at writing courtroom drama. It was very good. Now, the Nicky Torres, he does make it to the courthouse. And we've got all these officers sitting in the gallery, and they're all murmuring to themselves. Some of them who know who Nicky Torres is are even saying to themselves back and forth, "We can't let Nicky get to the courthouse. He can't testify. This would just burn everything down." But he comes in anyway, and we've got this moment where Hector is about to be exonerated. We're going to get Nicky on the stand. Nicky's going to say, "I was there. They were jumping me. Hector came and saved my life. I ran. I don't know what happened after Hector showed up, but I know that he got those two officers off me, and then I left." So we're building up to this moment. Nicky is sitting on the stand. We've got Hector at the defense desk, and he's just sighing this, breath of relief that this is about to be over. Well, you probably could have seen this coming, but Nicky perjures himself. He is afraid of all of these cops sitting in this courtroom. He knows that if he says the truth, walks out of the courtroom, he's probably a dead man. It also doesn't help that Nicky Torres is a junkie, so he's high strung just in general. But he says he wasn't even there. He says on the stand that he was at home that night, throwing away the defense that should have set Hector free. So instead, Matt has to do something very drastic. He leans heavily into Hector being a hero by way of telling the court that he is White Tiger. Now, in the previous episode, we posited how was that information going to be used? Because Matt spent a lot of time and energy making sure that that information didn't get out. It would tarnish the case. It would sway the jury thinking, oh, it's just some vigilante running around at night. He's White Tiger. Yeah, it makes sense. He was just running around beating up people. But he flipped it. And he says, you know what? I'm going to take that and say, this man is a hero. He goes out every night saving lives. And then he brought up other character witnesses of people who he did save. He even had police reports of officers saying White Tiger saved their lives. So we've got people of the community, people of the police force saying that White Tiger, Hector, is a hero. He would risk his life to do the right thing. And it doesn't really fit that this type of person would go and murder a cop, get into a fight with two cops for that matter, let alone murder one of them. And the prosecutor, of course, he rebuttals that and says, good people can do bad things. And he made a great point and a great argument. So I'm sitting in the courtroom. I feel like I'm sitting in the courtroom. And I'm just like, what's the jury thinking? Because it could still go either way. The evidence that proves Hector didn't do anything wrong per se is out the window. The witness perjured himself. So now it's literally just, are you going to take the word of the community and these police officers and say it can't be true what happened? Or can you say those things did happen, yet he may have still had a bad day and decided to pick a fight with these police officers? Well, as we wait for that answer, Wilson and Vanessa are back in therapy. Now, the actual counselor isn't there, Matt's girlfriend. I still don't know her name. Her name isn't said in this episode. I just realized that. But she isn't in the room yet. It's just Vanessa and Wilson having a continuation of the conversation they had earlier on in the episode. Vanessa sent someone, an associate, to pay off the people whose men were killed in that truck carjacking. Truckjacking? We'll just go with that. It's like close to $2 million in restitution for the men who were killed. And she did that behind Wilson's back. Again, she wants to maintain order in her city. She doesn't want the criminals and the thugs to think it's free reign out there and they can do whatever they want, because they can get emboldened and then come after her and her empire and what she's building and has built. Wilson doesn't like that very much. He doesn't like that he didn't know about it, at least. That's what he says. But he also doesn't like that she is still being involved in something that he's trying to move away from. He doesn't want to be attached to any kind of activity that may put undue eyes on his reputation. He's already the kingpin. So if he's trying to make it so people think less about that and more about him as mayor, there can't be anything that comes back on him or in his vicinity that he's still involved in nefarious acts. It's kind of funny because he just threatened the police commissioner the previous episode. It's, I'm sure, intentional, but he's got this misconstrued morality that they're playing with, and I like it. He's trying to put on the facade that he has changed. He is trying very hard to fight the kingpin within him, and he's having a very hard time doing it. We also get another glimpse of his knuckles. Now, in the previous episode, I mentioned we don't know why his knuckles are bloodied, but they are. And we get another shot of them. Like, at some point, hopefully, we're probably going to get a flashback explaining who he got into a fight with. It may be that he punched a wall. We don't know. But he still has these bloody knuckles. They juxtapose that to Matt Murdock and his bloody knuckles from the fight that he was just in an episode ago. So they're really playing with this tale of two identities between the both men, and as they come to terms with being that other half of themselves. There's this struggle of good and bad between the both of them that is playing really well on the screen. So, back in the courtroom, the jury has reached a verdict. Hector was charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and first-degree manslaughter. Each one he was found not guilty. It turns out the jury saw the pure-heartedness of Hector, the good nature of Hector, and decided it's not possible that the events the officer gave is what really happened. The implication for that they didn't really get into. We'll probably delve more into future episodes, but the implication is that officer lied. We should probably figure out where the disconnect is. But Hector is a free man, and I was surprised, to be honest with you, because it seemed too good to be true. It seemed too good to be true that the jury would take the side of the vigilante, who's a hero, quote unquote, and disregard what the police said. It's a very interesting route that they took with that, because it says the people do value the vigilantes running around the city. And even though the police spun this tale that this man killed one of them, they said no. Either that didn't happen, or it's fine that he killed that police officer. We still need him as White Tiger. That blows my mind that that's what they did. They're posing that conundrum. I like it. So Hector leaves, Matt leaves, the courtroom exits, and Wilson is watching TV and he sees the headline, "The Masked Vigilante Free to Go," or something to that effect. And he starts steaming because Masked Vigilante is free to go, acquitted of a murder charge for killing a police officer. That sounds weird, right? That sounds exactly against what Wilson is fighting for. He doesn't want vigilantes on the street. He doesn't want vigilantes committing crimes. He can't stand for that. So he calls back BB, the street reporter, and he sits down with for an interview with her. And he says exactly that. We can't allow vigilantes running around New York. We can't allow people running around with masks on, essentially assaulting people and believing that they are above the law. The justice system, our police force, should be handling these things, not vigilantes. And we've got this ominous music in the background, and Fisk's voice, just his voice, he's Kingpin. It just seems very nefarious, very sinister, as this scene is intertwined with White Tiger walking the street. And it's at night. White Tiger is walking down the street and he hears a noise. He hears a woman screaming. He turns up into an alley to follow that noise, to see what's happening, see who's in trouble. And this was a bit telegraphed. We've seen this scene a lot in other shows, and this is probably my only critique of this episode. But it's clear that he's about to get jumped, right? We've got Wilson Fisk talking about how it's not okay to be a vigilante, how he won't stand for it, how he needs to stamp out this type of activity, this type of mindset that it's okay to put on a mask and run around assaulting people. And now we've got White Tiger in his mask walking down an alley at night, so there's probably something about to happen. So we hear this woman's screams get louder. We hear Fisk getting angrier and angrier in his interview with BB. And White Tiger approaches a corner and we see a shadow. And someone pops out of the corner and shoots him in the head. That's right. Hector gets shot. Kingpin put a hit out on White Tiger, out on this vigilante who just got off free for having murdered a police officer. Again, my only critique is this scene because while we've not seen White Tiger in action, it stands to reason that he would have some sort of spatial awareness that just didn't exist for this one moment because he had to be shot. My only critique is how is it that he couldn't tell, couldn't feel that there might be someone around the corner? You remember the movie Dark Knight Rises? Of course you do. Officer Blake is running through the hospital looking for Commissioner Gordon. And as he's checking all the rooms, he walks into one and he opens the door, looks around, and Jim Gordon puts a shotgun to his head. And he says, "Check the corners, rookie." That's what I thought of as this scene played out. It didn't really make any sense to me that he was able to get got that easily. Well, I said all of that so I could hit you with the "oh my god, that just happened." It was the Punisher. Wilson had nothing to do with it. The Punisher snuck up on him. That makes more sense. Shot him in the head. Because the Punisher wasn't in the courtroom. The Punisher doesn't know who Nikki Torres is. He doesn't know that there was a victim or a witness. He doesn't know Hector was innocent. He was just dealing justice to a cop killer. That's crazy, right? And we know that it was the Punisher because as he's walking away from Hector's body, he walks toward the camera and he opens up his jacket to holster his weapon, and we see the skull on his chest. Now, it's either Punisher or somebody walking around with a vest on that's got a skull on it. Let's assume it's Punisher, right? But yeah, what an amazing episode. The writing in this episode was just so good. This is how courtroom dramas need to be written. I'm not saying any names, but some writers should take some notes. But man, this was a very good episode. I need it to be next Tuesday. Thank you for coming to this screening of Real Swell. I hope you enjoy. As you head out, I've got 3 things to ask of you. 1, pick up your trash. These ushers don't get paid enough. Number 2, make sure you are following so you don't miss the next screening. And number 3, hit that heart for me. I'll see you all next time. Make sure you got your ticket.